Ready or not, here I come. You can't hide. Gonna find you.
President Obama sending drones out, droning people, firing missiles at will, country to country. Of course, any president, if they had this technology when they were in office, probably would have done the same thing, right? To protect the people. I don't know. So let's look at this whole idea of how much power does the president have constitutionally, legally, to be able to make warlike power without actually declaring a war. Of course, an important constitutional check and balance is that the Congress is the only body with the power to declare war. It's important to point out, though, that the early version of the Constitution said that they had the power to make war. That was changed to the term declare war, specifically so that the president could react to attacks with more power, because of course Congress takes time to act and to declare war. We can still argue, though, and we should argue, the extent to which the president's power goes. That argument can extend beyond just war powers and into diplomacy. The president can run things by the Senate if he wants to have an official treaty ratified, or he can just go ahead and issue what's called an executive agreement, which he'll do much more often. It's a lot easier. You don't need Congress's approval, and you can still make pretty important connections with other countries. Does the President of the United States usurp too much power over foreign policy? An affirmative argument would include examples such as dictators that are overthrown with the help of the CIA, not with congressional approval. And in the place of those dictators, we see even worse regimes. Manuel Noriega there is an example of that in the 80s. And what about times where we try to protect our interests and or defend other countries? The invasion of Kuwait. There were, of course, negative externalities, other consequences, such as long-term involvement now in that region. President Clinton was criticized for leading a NATO bombing of Kosovo to try to stop the ethnic cleansing by Slobodan Milosevic. Most recently, was it an abuse of presidential powers to get involved in a going on 12-year war in Afghanistan in response to an al-Qaeda attack upon our country? And of course the argument President Bush and others will make was that yes, in fact, Congress gave authority to declare war on any country where there was terror. On the other hand, as Jon Stewart points out, when you declare war on a concept, you've just given the president almost limitless power. There are plenty of examples to point to the fact that the president in fact does not have enough power over the military and foreign policy. Remember, Woodrow Wilson was not able to get congressional approval to form an alliance with Britain during World War I, nor after World War I was he able to get from Congress the 14 points passed, which many argue would have gone pretty far in preventing a Second World War. Nor was FDR, without an attack on Pearl Harbor, able to get Congress to approve our involvement in the Second World War. In the 1970s, the country of Angola became communist because Gerald Ford was not able to get Congress to approve intervention there. Although I often ask you guys to take a side on issues, it's important to point out that most things are not black and white. So maybe we should look at guys like Schlesinger who interpret this question of presidential power differently. Depends really on the circumstance, he says. For instance, how different would our history be if Kennedy wasn't able to stop the Russian advance of nuclear weapons toward our country? Conversely, though, how different would our history be if we never got involved in Vietnam in the first place? Let's not forget that there is another part of the government instrumental in checking the power of the president, and that would be the Supreme Court. The courts haven't done much, though, to limit the power of the president in foreign policy. Maybe that points to the fact that the founding fathers really did want the president to have a degree of power independent of Congress. An example would be Mitchell versus Laird. The question the court had to answer was, did President Nixon have the right to expand the conflict in Vietnam into other countries without Congress issuing a declaration of war? And their answer was quite simply yes, because Congress did have a check on the power of the president to expand that conflict. They had the power of the purse. And if Congress wanted to stop Nixon from expanding the war, they would simply cut off the money. The fact that they didn't do so points out that Congress basically approves of those actions. In 1981, President Foriegn was basically sued for freezing some American companies' assets that were in the country of Iran. And the courts basically again sided with the president here. They said that the president's actions were, quote, necessary for the resolution of a foreign dispute. And I'm sure you remember from World War II, where FDR allowed for the detention of Japanese American citizens. The court even upheld that right of the president to do that because it was supposed to defend our national security. So you be the judge. Does the president have too much power? Is the role of the United States really to go around being the world police? Should we be nation building? Or should we simply be protecting ourselves? To what extent do we sacrifice liberty in order to protect our nation and our people?